I turned mine on. Let me know if it sounds all right.
Can you hear me?
Sounds good.
We're, can you hear me? It's turned on, I believe. We're good?
Cool.
Okay, if I put it behind my back, is that okay?
Cool. Those are open. Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me? Does that work? Oh, 5,
It's not live yet.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, we're all good.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for coming out this evening. Welcome to the Future of Mary Jane, Cannabis and Cryptocurrency. So, Michigan just voted yes on Proposal 1. Give ourselves a round of applause for those who are live streaming. That means that we voted for legalization of recreational use for adults. And so we're going to kind of explore what that means, what that shift means for the industry, for Michigan, for Detroit specifically. And then we're going to look at how blockchain technology and cryptocurrency can further support the industry. I am Ingrid LaFleur, your host for the evening. I am the Chief Community Officer for EOS Detroit, who is putting on this talk. And we've been putting on a series of talks to just illustrate how blockchain technology and cryptocurrency can be used in all of these different ways in hopes to help people have a better understanding of this new technology. I'm with Margot Bruner with Perpetual Harvest, and Rob Conser, who's CEO of EOS Detroit. Margot is our cannabis expert. Many of you know her already. I called her the cannabis queen. It got hashtag.
Oh, wow, I didn't see that.
But she's the one who taught me everything that I know about the cannabis industry in Michigan and in Detroit. And Rob is the CEO, as I mentioned, of EOS Detroit. EOS Detroit is a block producer for the blockchain EOS and other chains. And we'll get into that. And he's our tech guy. He's the blockchain genius. So he will help us break down these concepts and understanding more about blockchain technology and cryptocurrency. I just want to get a quick feel of the audience. How many of you know about blockchain technology and cryptocurrency? If you could raise your hand. Oh, we have a pretty informed audience. Look at that. Yay. And so for those of you who don't know anything, we do have a handout that you can read really quickly. But it looks like our conversation can just kind of move on from step 2 or 3 instead of step 1 as usual.
Okay.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask Margot to kind of break down where we are with the laws and regulations. I know that we can't consume legally until December 6th, so everybody's looking forward to that.
Yes.
But yes, please let us know, what does it mean? What does this law mean for Michigan?
Essentially, the voters voted, 56% of people in the state of Michigan voted yes on Proposal 1, and that approved adult use marijuana and hemp. So what that means is if you're over 21 years of age, it is legal to possess 2.5 ounces of flower on your person, 10 ounces stored properly at home, and you can also grow 12 plants per household. So we're on the cusp of that. So the vote was certified by Secretary of State, takes 10 days to take effect. So essentially on December the 6th, it will be legal for any adult 21 years of age or older to consume, similar to alcohol.
That's so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are the first state in the Midwest to have full legalization?
We are the first state in the Midwest to have full legalization.
So what does that look like? Because I know that Colorado was like one of the first, right?
Colorado was one of the first. California is the largest. So now with Michigan moving into that space, we'll actually supersede Colorado based on population. So Michigan will be number 2 now behind California.
Mm.
Yes.
Awesome. So the cannabis and crypto industry they've been dancing together. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, Rob?
Yeah, sure. So there are a lot of startups focused in the blockchain industry with regards to figuring out how to solve some of the challenges that the cannabis industry is faced with. Um, a lot of the challenges have to do with provenance. So we were just on a call earlier this week,
Yes.
Margot and myself and Ingrid, with one of the startups based on EOS called Parcel that's working on allowing the actual product to be tracked through its life cycle using blockchains, which it gives us assurances that are mathematically secured about where things are and who signed off on what. So it gives us a chain of custody, and this efficiency that can be had from doing it in this manner is actually going to be really beneficial to businesses. Beyond that, though, I think one of the largest problems faced by the cannabis businesses, and if you're looking at what's happening to some of these businesses, there's been federal crackdowns over the last, I don't know, probably decade at least, if not longer, maybe close to 2 decades now, and some seizures of cash. A lot of these businesses operating with cash only because banks won't service them because they're deemed high risk. So they're effectively being shut out from financial services they need. And I think that's really a potential. There's a lot of potential using this technology to allow some of those businesses to continue to operate. Now in states like Michigan, that's not necessarily, I don't think. But I'm not really sure, maybe Margot can inform us, like, there's still this tension between federal and state, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it is still federally illegal, and there are still a number of banking challenges associated with that.
Okay, yeah. So we're not totally out of the weeds.
No. Or need it. No.
You know, the states are cool with it, and they want the tax revenue, but the feds, there's still the risk that all these businesses are facing, that the feds could come in and decide to target them, decide to seize their assets. Maybe, these banks still aren't servicing them. So there's a lot of advantages, that can be conceptualized, and certainly businesses looking to solve this problem, especially for businesses in the state. How can they move their cash?
Well, it actually does pose, well, I'm not sure if it's going to pose a challenge, but even though it's federally illegal, it is still federally taxed. So, so don't. It actually is taxed at a much higher rate. You face 280E tax laws associated with this industry where you don't have write-offs or cost of goods sold. So the amount of taxes that you owe is actually much more significant than if you were just in a normal business.
Margot, can you talk about some of the roles that you play within the advocacy and cannabis industry?
So I just finished a political run, I guess, of sorts, as a designated speaker for a coalition to regulate marijuana like alcohol, which was Proposal 1. I am a commissioner with the Michigan State Police Impaired Driving Committee. I am not a police officer. I'm a commissioner on police board to determine what impaired driving is for cannabis in the state of Michigan. I am Michigan Democratic Party Executive Board Cannabis Caucus. I am the Detroit Regional Chair chapter of Cannabis Caucus for Metro Detroit, and a consultant.
And this is why I call her the cannabis. I have a question about businesses. What does it take for a business to set up? I know that some rules were put into place. Do they still apply even after this vote? Did anything change?
Yeah, essentially we created a whole new chain of licensure. So some people are familiar with the original medical law where you can grow 12 plants for yourself and 12 plants for 5 patients, capping out at 72. And that was under a home grow system. And then we evolved into seed to sale, which is much more regulated and essentially legitimized our medical market, because a lot of people kind of stayed away because it was kind of gray. So that deems the start of the chain is cultivation, processing, secure transport, safety, which is testing, and provisioning. So that's a closed loop system where you can only sell business to business. So under this new recreational adult use, it will pretty much follow the same. There'll still be a 5-tier licensure. The numbers are a little bit different. So Class A in medical is 500, B 1,000, 1,500. Under recreational, it would be 500, 1,000, and 2,000. And you can stack those up to 10,000 under the medical. The laws are not totally hashed out under adult use as to how that will look. And there also is going to be a micro business model, which would allow a person to essentially be vertically integrated, to grow up to 150 plants of their own, and to sell to their own customers. You can never cross over into a dispensary system.
Does the seed to sale apply for micro businesses?
Those laws have not been totally fleshed out yet, so we don't know exactly what it looks like. There are some best practices, but I don't know exactly what Michigan's going to adopt under that. And the governing body that will do that is not even sworn in, so there'll be a whole new chain of command. One thing that was relatively good is that we kind of got the Holy Trinity. We got an appropriate governor, an appropriate attorney general who are friendly to the industry, and hopefully things will go smoothly.
Rob, it sounds like the seed to sale is something that we could put on a blockchain.
Yeah.
And it seems like eventually there could be an app for the micro business if that's what they have to use.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and that's kind of going back to Parcel, what they're doing. Unfortunately, though, it sounds like their model wouldn't fully work in Michigan yet, because they start at the packaging. So once the flower's in packaging, that's where they start tracking it.
Yes.
But Margot was saying that we have to be able to track all the way from seeds. So you could start with the packages of seeds, but then there would have to be some new sort of system devised around how to track, the plants as they're being cultivated and then processed. But that could be done, and it's definitely one of the major use cases of the blockchain tech is the supply chain, being able to track where things are going, where they've been, who signed off on them, and leverage efficiency gains from putting all of that into a transparent public sort of place, so that someone down the street has what you need, but you're ordering it from 2 cities over. You might be able to make that connection and realize, oh, I can go down the street and get that. And so there's going to be a lot of efficiency gains just based on how goods move, based on putting all of this information about how commodities are being tracked in this single place, and we can kind of figure out more efficient ways to move goods around, which I think is good on the whole. It saves money for businesses. It saves energy for the environment. It's more sustainable not to be driving all over the place. And the challenge is, how do we link the physical world into the digital world in a secure way? So we need some ways for, someone, the farmer, let's say someone is planting the seeds. When they plant the seeds, they need to somehow put a proof of that onto a blockchain. And there's ways that can be done, but that's kind of where this is going. Like, we need to prevent people from being able to just put junk data, junk information in, and make sure that, okay, Margot really planted those seeds, or maybe you're not cultivating, but someone really planted those seeds, and then, figuring out all of the ways we can build those assurances is kind of the challenge we're at right now.
I actually do think you could do it now under the micro business model. You couldn't do it under the license model because you have to use an RFID chip.
Mm-hmm.
But first of all, before I came to the world of cannabis, I was in the automotive industry, so my background is supply chain. So that's my strong suit, essentially. And when I was at MJ Biz last week or a week before that, which is a very large conference of the cannabis industry, there's a hologram tag. So this little tag right here that you see that has a hologram on it There's multiple versions of this, and there is a version of this that has a scratch off. So let's say this came in triplicate and each one had a scratch off. So I could tag the seed, and then when it, retag it when it moved to the next, and then scratch off, and then as long as the tags match, you actually could track something in a seed to sale manner using blockchain
Nice.
with existing technology.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's some special math in that tag,
Yes.
basically,
Yes.
that enables this. And yeah, that's awesome. Like figuring out those interfaces between the physical and digital world is what's really going to make all this blockchain tech real. It's been really ethereal up in the clouds, really abstract for many years now, and it's finally great to see that it's coming into the physical world in a way that people can interact with it and use it.
Yes, it's moving really fast.
I just wanted to quickly explain Parcel. It's PARSL, and they're just now launching. You probably received tokens already if you have EOS tokens. But if not, you can still sign up, right, and get rewards right now. And then, so the way that it works, there's like two separate systems. So one of them is the packaging that Rob was saying. So that means that me as a consumer, when I receive the product, I could potentially scan that package and know exactly who grew it and all the hands that it touched, which is really great as a consumer because for me, the seed to sell always seemed like a business-to-business kind of thing, whereas Parcel is for the consumer. So then there's quality control, and as we know from medicinal use, this is extremely important. So that's one thing that they're doing. And then there's the seed token. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I believe from my quick glance, and this isn't investment advice, I'm not advocating buying tokens, but what they've done is essentially created a token, which is a representation of scarce value on a blockchain. So the most common token that people have talked about for a while now is Bitcoin, but it's a scarce representation of value. And there's all of these different tokens now. There's thousands of them now, and people are using them in all kinds of different manners, and they're programmable. So essentially you can program your own logic into these things, and you can actually make it so the business model that you're building can capture value into that token. So it sounds kind of familiar. That's because these kind of work like stocks, but they're stocks that aren't regulated by brokers. They're on the internet, and anyone can interface with them. And I know that that's scary, and a lot of people are like, don't call them stocks. Because they are. They're not stocks, but they're kind of like stocks. They're kind of like money. They're kind of like all of these different assets that we already kind of know about in some different ways. And tokens are their kind of a whole new beast. But what they're doing with the seed token is some of the revenues from their company is actually kind of being put into the token. And I believe the way that they're doing this is there's a few different mechanisms. So if you already have some of the tokens, when they create more tokens, they'll give you some. That's called staking. And I believe, and maybe I didn't actually dive too deep into Parcel because I just heard about them earlier this week. But I believe they're essentially capturing value from the interactions of their business, so the way their business captures value, and then some of that value finds its way back into the token. Different ways this can be done are by pooling funds and then buying that token back off the market. They call that a buyback and burn. So there's ways that the token can actually become more scarce as the business model scales, as their business actually gains adoption. So there's a real hard link, in a sense, between the business succeeding and the token being more valuable. And that's kind of the idea of token economics. So there's all of these different systems people are experimenting with, different token economic systems. Definitely don't put any money that you can't afford to lose into any of those, because they're all experiments right now, and no one really knows what's going to work, what's not. If you pick the right ones, you might do okay, but just be really careful, because it's a wild west, really, at this point. It's like this whole new internet money wild west, in a sense. And a lot of people have been burned by getting in the euphoria, in the hype. Everyone's talking about it, so don't end up on that side of the fence, because it's good to just really understand what you're putting your money into. And so that's why I'd say it's really interesting what they're doing, and that these models exist, and that these new asset classes are emerging. But don't bet the farm on it, Be careful.
So what's interesting with Parcel is that they want to create something for law enforcement, so that when you are carrying this package, they can scan it and they can see that the police can see that this is your typical buying pattern, and like this is what you usually would buy, and that you have a license, and so on and so forth. So when he was explaining this to me, I found that to be very interesting. And
I didn't like it.
Before we get into the Parcel
Yes.
is they're based in
Yeah.
Australia, so this is like a totally different type of world. So everything that they're coming from. So it makes logical sense. But yeah, what did you think about?
Yeah, when we were on the call, I was like, ooh, I don't know. Like I was like, I need to sleep on this, and I didn't like it. It just is a violation of personal liberty. But one thing that I could say about it is that overall, they're based in Australia, and there are a number of markets that have become federally legal in other countries. So Canada is recreational and medical. Mexico is recreational and medical now. South Korea just came on. South Africa is on. They're based in Australia. So in the future, when there is a worldwide market, I think that it might be the only technology essentially that you could use in the future. So.
And I think it's good for us to understand all the different ways it can be used. So it can be for our benefit, or it could make us maybe a little uncomfortable in terms of the level of transparency it can offer.
Yeah, that was just really futuristic, that a police officer would just come up and scan you and know your buying patterns. Like that didn't really resonate with me. So.
That's definitely the risk
Yeah.
of being involved. I mean, it's all up in the air in a lot of senses. Like it's not. There hasn't been a new asset class defined by the SEC yet. They're looking at these things, these tokens, and saying, are they securities? Are they not? But beyond that, there's this risk of now. So I'm sure we've heard of people realizing how much information they're putting on Facebook. I'm putting my child's photos on Facebook. Maybe I should reconsider that, because those are going to be online forever. So some parents are like, I'm not going to post my child's photos. This blockchain revolution is a whole nother level, because now we're putting our financial transactions in the open. But we're not necessarily linking them back to us right away. But there's ways that we can do that without realizing it. So it's really important to understand the full risk, and also just, some people are okay with that. Some people are okay with putting some of these transactions out in the open, but before you go using the system, you should understand the implications. And there are ways that you can use these systems and keep them totally separate from your identity as well. It's not simple, it's not a trivial manner, but it's possible. So, it's with all technology, that it can be used for great, it can be used for bad, and these could be tracking systems. They could be empowerment devices or empowerment technologies for communities. There's a lot of different narratives at play right now, but it's important to understand what you're getting into.
Awesome. I want to take questions from the audience. Anybody have a question?
Okay, so I guess with the blockchain and just handling information, like how does that work out, with workforce management? Because I plan on going to get my industry, you know, and services in that way. So like, how do you see that working out, you know, as far as like payroll and, you know, handling and training and quality assurance, like you saying?
Oh yeah, that's
You
a
gotta talk
great.
to Anthony in the back.
Yeah, that Anthony's running a payroll business, cannabis payroll business.
Yes.
But yeah, I'll repeat it. So the question was, oh, I've got a mic. Yeah, the question was, how does the blockchain industry and the workforce management industry intersect essentially? So how does payroll, recruiting,
Right. So basically, how does HR play into all of
how
it?
does HR play into? Yeah, that's a great question. So there's already a handful of apps that I know of that people are building. There's actually a a job portal to find jobs called Hire Vibes that EOS Vibes, they're based out of Ireland, is working on. There's also Horace Pay, which is a payroll management system that's another group is working on. I think they're based in SF. So there's a few on EOS that are actually targeting some of these use cases already. I'm not an expert in that industry by any means, but from a glance, allowing money to move faster and freer will help those industries a lot, along with the triple entry accounting, because blockchains give us, it's an enhancement on double entry accounting. We also have a cryptographic assurance now. So I see those as benefits, and also reducing the barriers to a global market, as you were kind of alluding to earlier with cannabis. So there's a global talent pool. So if we create these global systems that use global money, that's kind of really interoperable on a global level, I think that we'll see kind of a lot of walls come down in a sense. So it's a good question. Thank you.
Yeah, speaking of the global part of it, I was just curious because Parcel is a global tracking system for cannabis. So what does that mean for on a local level if there's like a global tracking system for cannabis?
Well, our current system, we're using RFID tags. So that was one thing that we talked about on the call. So if I had a scanner and I rolled past your building and there was 10,000 tags, I could scan and I would know that there's 10,000 tags. So there's a lack of security there because it covers more space. Whereas if you were scanning something like this, it's like an Apple Pay, or like when you do Speed Pay, like you would need to essentially be 10 inches or closer to be able to scan. So there is a greater level of security, especially when you're holding a very large amount of product. So if we're saying right now that a business can essentially, under Michigan law, stack licenses up to 10,000 plants. Let's say I grow 10,000 plants, and each one of those plants grows 3 to 4 pounds. I have 30, 40,000 pounds. So just based on value and security, I think that this method would be better moving forward, especially on a global level. Yeah.
Thank you. Lou?
You mentioned that currently it's an all cash business.
Yes.
Are there any retailers, dispensaries accepting Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies? And if not, why not?
I'm not sure, but one thing I will say, there are different systems I've heard about. You can scan or potentially use a credit card. It depends on how your business is structured. So if you come in and you schedule a consultation with me and you pay for the consultation and I give you a certain amount of product for free as part of the consultation, then you essentially could use a credit card. If you came in to buy just flour or some cannabis infused product that's still federally illegal, and I allow you to use a debit card, that's wire fraud. So there are places where state law and federal law don't mesh. And is it a major violation? No. If I did like 20,000 transactions that way, would it be? Yes. So it's a little bit dangerous.
Question is for you, Margot. With cannabis being a world industry and a world commodity, Your opinion, once the world starts importing their cannabis into the United States market, what's that going to do to the growers here? Where it already hurts all the rest of agriculture, but they get government subsidies, etc. But the cannabis industry won't get those considerations. So when you have countries like Mexico, Africa, Caribbean, sending things over here, pennies on the dollar tonnage, how's that going to affect, in your opinion, the growers here? Do you see this market surviving?
Well, once it's federally legal and it's an agricultural commodity, I don't see why you wouldn't get subsidies, because it's just agriculture. It's just literally a plant. It's just a highly regulated agricultural product. I think that the consumer will decide, not the government. So there will be people who want to know something is locally sourced, almost like farm to table, and those people will purchase out of that market. There'll be people who are looking for basement bottom prices, and there will be a market that supports that also. So, yeah.
Yeah, you talked about the micro business model. Is there going to be a large fee for that, like as an individual person who wants to have a micro business model? What's the buy-in cost to that? Also, can you sell off the internet and deliver? Does it have to be a physical environment? And I guess that's the core of.
None of those laws are technically written yet. As far as could you sell it on the internet, like no shipping. Could you arrange a transaction on the internet? Like, I'm marketing this product on Instagram.
Just have a nice website that can buy product,
Wheat maps.
deliver tomorrow. You know.
If delivery is allowed, which I'm assuming it will be, I don't think you would need a physical location.
Okay.
That just wouldn't even be logical.
Right.
But those laws aren't written yet.
Okay.
Yes. But
Is there
I
a
would say no, but the laws aren't written yet.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Is there a deadline to when the laws will be?
Hopefully within a year or so.
Okay.
So the people who are going to vote on those, I mean, this is lame
Sure,
duck. People
sure.
are lobbying for different things. January will come. A board will be formed that will determine what the rules are. There will be legislative bills that have to go through that regulate this, like all the previous other industries, and it would take probably, I would guess, at the least 8 months to a year.
Okay. And then also when you talk about the Detroit blockchain, are you talking about like an actual token currency that people are going to use in Detroit, or is it more just using the blockchain for tracking and stuff of that nature? Do you have a coin? Are you trying to sell it, mine it, make
Possibly,
it coin?
but it won't be
Token.
mineable.
Okay.
If we do a token, we're still analyzing this. It'll be given away to all Detroiters,
Okay.
and it won't be mineable. So,
It won't be mine.
but the details of that will be revealed next year.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
beyond that, though, there's a lot of use cases in blockchain that don't have to necessarily focus around a token or like a local token. So the advantages of like the parcel app that we've been discussing could be used by businesses here potentially. And I think a lot of projects that are being developed all over the place globally, we can kind of bring into Detroit, introduce to people, and I think people will find benefit. So that's one of the strategies that EOS Detroit's taking in order to introduce blockchain to people, and also in a real way where it's like, you can use this thing today, you can play with it, you can see if it's for you, if you're deriving benefit from it. Because I think mostly to date, the industry's been speculative. And so it's been about financial speculation. And we're in this in-between period where we're shifting from just financial speculation over to real utility and usage. So we're focused on, hey, what are some cool ways and useful ways that real usage can be derived here?
I think this is a good time to explain EOS, the blockchain. It launched this year in June. It's the latest and the greatest blockchain. And the reason is because it can process way more transactions than Bitcoin or many of the other tokens, about 3,000 per second. And it doesn't have transaction fees. So like in Bitcoin, it can be very expensive if you want to buy something because of the transaction fees that are coming from the mining, right? EOS does not work that way. There is no mining. Actually, token holders vote for the block producers, which EOS Detroit is a block producer. So it's a decentralized system, and there are 21 block producers who produce the blocks for the EOS blockchain. That just means that they verify the transactions and they hold the data. And so we are, then there's like about 100 on standby, and in case something happens with the first 21. And so we're on standby. One of the great things about being a block producer is that unlike with mining where they're just like competing and trying to make a lot of money, as a block producer, we actually have to use the money that we are given for doing this operating the blockchain. Portion of it has to go towards a humanitarian effort of some sort or some project. So this is a blockchain that's very altruistic because it's the first governed blockchain. So there is a lot of ethics and values that are attached to this blockchain. So it's very interesting. If you don't know much about it, please feel free to ask us. You know, I don't want to go too long on it, but and then we're always available. We do workshops on it, but feel free to Google and look us up and and find out more. So we have another question, Keisha?
Two questions. I wanted to ask, are there any easy onboarding approaches to the micro business model? I'm thinking of like complementary type of businesses, maybe like WeWork type spaces for cannabis businesses, places where you could actually
Well, those
bars or different things like that. Are there a lot of restrictions in those type of?
for ancillary businesses that aren't consumption related, absolutely none. You can have a bank account. I wouldn't put the word cannabis or marijuana in the name of whatever you're trying to do, because that gets kind of tricky despite what you're trying to do. But you essentially could operate like any other business if it was not consumption based. Yes.
And if it's consumption based, which we rather.
Right. If it's consumption based and it's a public place that someone can just walk in like a coffee shop, no, that's not legal. If it's private, then yes.
If it's private, kind of like in Denver, that mansion that I've heard about that you can go and bring your weed and smoke and.
Well, though, like a social club where somebody brings their own and you're not like actually selling in there.
Yeah.
Yes, that could happen.
That can happen. You hear that, y'all?
My other question was a social justice type of question. Is there any legislation, any type of plan for the release of folks who are in the jail all over, this kind of thing, and these places are on the corner making big bucks, now?
Yes. Okay. So to me, social justice means a multitude of things. So one, we'll start with the expungement portion. Is expungement covered under adult use? No, because there's a one clause rule in the state of Michigan that the law can't go forward and backward. So I can't make it legal and make it legal in the past also. The fact that it has become legal, you've already seen a shift right now. So in Kent County, they've decided they're not going to prosecute anybody that has a case that's more than 2.5 ounces, even though it's not even really legal until December the 6th. So someone who was incarcerated previously, with the current governor and attorney general that we have, there is supposed to be given exceptional consideration to that factor and that they will proceed with expungements. Is that written as law? No, it is not. But we are definitely moving in that direction. But there are a number of complications that come along with that. So when I say expungement and you had a gram, an ounce, 2.5 ounces, yes. When I say expungement and you had 10 pounds, no. So that's tricky, and it's a very, very slippery slope. Also, the state of Michigan is unusual in some other ways. So driving laws and criminal laws are linked. So in order for you to qualify for an expungement, you're supposed to have one offense. But what if you have one offense and your driver's license was suspended? I mean, does that count as two offenses? So some determination will have to be made about like the details and the fine print of how expungement will happen. But I think that collectively, most people agree that expungement should accompany this. When it comes to, so that's social justice. Social equity is a whole nother conversation. And that is a way to enrich people who were previously disproportionately affected by the war on drugs. And that is also written into the initiative. Are the details written? No. Do I consider that like a personal interest of mine? Absolutely.
Yeah, and do we know what the new Attorney General, where she stands?
Well, that's written into the adult use initiative, but what social equity looks like is not necessarily what people think social equity looks like. So there are best practices. So the state of California is a non-affirmative action state similar to Michigan. So you can't say, okay, we're going to give this race of people anything. You can say that this particular zip code was disproportionately affected by the war on drugs. And so people that are within that zip code or have lived within that zip code within a set amount of time would essentially qualify for a permit. And that's what happened in California. But it gets really tricky. So if I give you a permit, if you were disproportionately affected by the war on drugs, and then I gave you a permit to move to the front of the line, you were disproportionately affected by the war on drugs in a multitude of ways, in that you might not have access to capital. So I'm giving you a pass, and now I tell you that you need to buy a building for $6 million. You might not know how to raise funds or to actually be able to participate in the market. And so just giving it to people in that way became extremely predatory in California. So attorneys would set up a fee where, okay, I'll find you a person with the equity permit, and you'll pay me $100,000, and I'll give the person who has the permit $45,000 for their permit, and they've completely sold off on their rights. They have no equity whatsoever in the business. So people were being like bought and sold and traded under equity programs. So you have to find a way that actually works, and that me giving you this permit really truly does give you access to the market, not just me giving you this permit. It's a coupon for something that you still essentially couldn't put to use.
Awesome. Joe, you wanted to respond to that?
Yeah, this is concerning social justice. If you Google HB 6227, that's an expungement bill that's been introduced by Representative Sheldon Neely out of Genesee County, and it addresses that very issue. The other side of it, in a conversation with the incoming Attorney General, she did say that if Proposition 1 passes, which it did, she will support HB 6227. So there is legislation that's going to move forward after this new administration comes into office that's going to address that very issue.
Thank you, Joe.
Some communities are opting out. Can you explain what opting out is, and if Detroit opts out, what that impact will be in terms of what can and cannot happen?
I wouldn't really see Detroit opting out because it also disallows you to have the tax revenue. So I think it's political now, where this is becoming more legitimate and people are looking for this. So when somebody tells you they're going to fix the roads, this is the budget that they're pulling from. And cities do have the option to opt out. It doesn't mean that you opt out from legalization. It doesn't mean that you could arrest a person in that particular town and not another town. What it means is that they don't want businesses that cultivate, sell, produce marijuana, or in some combination. So some people opt in and they say we'll allow cultivation, we'll allow everything except dispensaries. There are different models that work for different cities. I do think that cities should be able to opt in or out based on the citizenship of that particular city and how they feel about this industry. If it's not something that they're welcoming to, that's perfectly fine. I have a personal philosophy. I just like to move like water. If you don't want this business here, then there is a town that does.
So opting out doesn't necessarily mean you can customize opting out.
You can customize opting out, or you can opt out in totality. Yes.
So I have a question for each one of you. You said you're a commissioner, right, for the
Yes.
police? So, piggybacking on the social justice point, driving while impaired, for example, they do urine drug screens, and it's qualitative testing right now, either positive or negative. So,
Yes.
is there any initiative for quantitative testing? Because, I mean, having a very high level of serum THC obviously is different from a very low level if you smoked like 3 days ago or something like that, for example.
Yes.
And that seems a lot of prejudice in the system. And I'll finish my other question too. Is there a way on the EOS blockchain to monetize data and trade it? Like, for example, if I'm working out, my heart rate's really up, it's literally proof of work that I've worked out, right? And this could be exchanged for other forms of digital value that I could use for other things.
I'll let you go first, Margot.
Yes, that's what we are tasked with, determining what is operating under the influence in the state of Michigan. And the commission does not end until March of 2019. We have not voted, nor have any of the commissioners agreed to setting a particular level of nanograms is what is impaired driving. So the commissioners are comprised of, there's 5 of us. There's 3 medical doctors, a toxicologist, and myself. And I am the person that is there to represent qualified and registered patients in the state of Michigan. So I'm very well versed nationally in the cannabis industry. And so one part of the conversation was that we don't really have data. So this is not something where we have a federal clearance and we can just bring like 10 people in here and allow them to consume and to monitor their blood, to observe. We're essentially piggybacking off of other people's research. So I called a person that I personally respect in the industry. His name is Andrew Muir. He is the owner of something called Top Shelf Bud Tending. He is based originally in Denver, and now he is in Las Vegas. And he's the only person that I know that has the level of data and information as far as actual transactions. So he is a bud tender, just like a bartender. And over the past 4 years, he has serviced 20,000 people. And he said that the data that you would see with the person consuming that is federal is using THC that is at a level of maybe 6 to 9%. That's not what's on the market right now. It's much higher. If you go into a provisioning center, or even if you grew it in your house, that would be really poor quality, 6 to 9%. And if you were a person that were to consume the equivalent of, like, say, 0.7 grams, which would be a joint, your nanograms might read at 30, 40. So when you see all these tests out here that are 5 and 10%, that's like a time delay and a low level of quality. Like, if you're talking about what is actually really happening right now in 2018. So personally, I think it should be a combination of factors, visual, along with other things, not just set to a particular blood level. Yes.
Nice, agreed.
Yes.
So to answer your question, the question was, is there a way to monetize your own data on EOS? And that's actually a great question, because in general, it's one of the major efficiency gains that we'll see in the economy from moving internet services to these new business models based on blockchains. So in general, the idea is your health data should be worth something, right? I mean, there's researchers who would love to have that and perform some research on it. So it has some intrinsic value. So does every like on social media. That's curation of content. Every post you make has intrinsic value. Your genetic code has intrinsic value.
Wow.
So there's going to be ways, and being an early adopter of these apps that are exploring this space and these new business models, could be really profitable. And you can be an early adopter without putting your own money in, just by using them, just by spending your time getting an EOS account, figuring it out, and we're happy to help you with that. Right now, there aren't a whole lot of apps because it's still just 5 months old, but by next year, a year from now, I imagine there's a project right now where a guy wants people to be able to monetize their DNA. So in an anonymous fashion, too, for research. So you don't have to actually link your DNA to your identity, but you can still provide that for researchers and get value back. He estimates that each individual's DNA is worth about $70,000. That's how much 23andMe makes off your DNA. When you pay them to sequence it,
Wow.
they actually subsidize the cost of sequencing because it's about $800 to sequence your DNA, and you pay $200 to them. But that $600 they eat up front, they make hand over fist by reselling your genetic information to about 250 other people on average. So that's value that each individual has intrinsically in their own genetic code. The words we speak, the emotions, every data point of our life could potentially find its way into these different services to the degree that each individual wants, right? Some people don't want their life on the internet, and just to finish the point, the money that tech services like internet services, Facebook, Airbnb, Uber, all of these companies are consolidating the wealth that their networks are creating. They're acting as middlemen. And blockchain technology allows to disintermediate them and allow all of the individuals to share that value that they're consolidating. So it's about distribution of wealth instead of consolidation around companies. So the combination of that with new internet services business models will allow people to tap into all kinds of new value. And that's one of the reasons EOS Detroit is so focused on creating this literacy in Detroit, because we believe by getting people the internet access that they may or may not have, so getting them on the internet, step one, teaching them about the new opportunities is step two, and ideally this will create new economic activity in our city that wasn't there. So yeah, to answer your question, yes.
Right now or in the future?
I can't. There is a blockchain called Steam, which is the predecessor to the EOS network. Steam is steemit.com. That is a pure example of being able to post, being able to use your time or your sweat equity or your intellectual capital to create content that's published to a blockchain and then gives you some money back without actually necessarily putting any money into the system. So that's an example today of a social network that's doing this, but it's the tip of the iceberg. Steam's only got maybe 100,000 users, and big internet services like Facebook have multiple billions of users. So we barely even scratched the surface of moving people to equitable internet services.
Awesome. Do we have any more questions?
So, would there be any? I guess I'm more interested in the nonprofit businesses too. So they're going to be. I'm sure we're going to see a rise of it like in the next few years. So, how do you all feel about that?
I think nonprofit models are great. We are actually partnered with the Detroit Blockchain Center. Nate Talbot's the executive director. He's in the local blockchain community here. So we're looking, we're basically totally in his corner, however he needs us to help his model. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of benefits to nonprofits. Low profits is a new thing I'm hearing about. So there's a low profit pizza shop in Southwest. I don't know a ton about that model, but
well, I guess more so for like the cannabis industry. Like how do you,
for cannabis, right.
Not a lot of people want to go low profit. No.
Yeah. I mean, cannabis is worth more than gold per weight, right?
Yes.
So.
Right now.
At the point, yeah.
Right.
I mean, for like programs like medical programs or nonprofits, people come up with all kinds of things. So
yes.
do you like see that happening? Like
possibly, or maybe co-ops would be another like middle ground. I'm not really sure. I don't know too much about the cannabis industry, inner workings, and how people are running their businesses. So maybe Margot.
There are a number of people who like co-op models. I'm not sure how that interfaces with the blockchain portion. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I might not be the best to answer that one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, create a DAC.
DACs, yeah. So decentralized autonomous communities are a way you can align individuals with their community using a token model. And you can create voting structures so the community can kind of ratify its own government documents, decide to fund their own proposals, There's a number of things we can do with DAC. So there could be a cannabis-focused DAC potentially. I know there is a blockchain like Steam called Smoke Network that is actually, it's cannabis connoisseurs that are a social media network, but they're getting paid in their own token, the Smoke token. So, I mean, I haven't used Smoke Network personally, but it exists, and that is, an example of.
Is that Snoop's token?
No, it's not Snoop's.
Okay, because he does have a token.
I don't know who created
Yes.
Smoke token. I think they're somewhere on the West Coast. I would
Yeah.
imagine.
And Dennis Rodman has a token too, right? A cannabis token?
I'm not sure. I'm sure that Snoop's is worth way more. One outside of the fact that he's Snoop and that's just his imagery. He is affiliated with Viridian Capital, which is acquiring other businesses in the cannabis industry. So essentially, he would have a network of businesses to pool.
That's cool. Yeah, I was gonna say the future of nonprofits are DAC to me.
Okay.
So decentralized autonomous communities. It's on the sheet if you want to look at it more. Edward.
Just have a quick question from Argo. What are the rules around growing outside? There are positives and negatives of outside growth, but are there any opportunities to, kind of
Under the micro business model, ooh, that would be regulated by a number of things. One, I'm not sure if the state of Michigan would or would not allow that from a security perspective, potentially. And also your individual municipality. So the police department in your town, other people are going to respond. Like Laura has no police department. So essentially it will be up to the municipality to determine. For California is legal. You cannot grow outdoors in LA County. If you go out to Gold County, and then you can grow outdoors. So if you're in a more rural area than more agricultural, then it would be open to that. But if you have a group of growers, now you're talking about cross-pollination, and you need a number of controls in place to make sure that your product stays in what you intended, as what you intended.
Need this? Okay. Okay, this question is for Ingrid and Rob. Talking about Detroit blockchain, so these isolated communities, is there any city or location that's being like a beta site? I ask this because I'm the chairman CEO of the Highland Park Chamber of Commerce, and we are soliciting experts in crypto to come do workshops and set up a beta network where we can get some business owners, different people to participate and collect the data, et cetera, et cetera. So is it anything happening like that, or is it any talk of somebody wanting to do it?
Or we can make it happen.
Well, that's,
yeah.
okay, that's why I'm asking.
We're very interested in working with you. And I know in Venezuela, they had a recent currency crisis, and cryptocurrency is picking up like wildfire there. There's a multitude of various cryptocurrencies that are actually achieving sizable use and growth in Venezuela out of need because their money has hyperinflated, so people are trying to protect the value that they're earning. But we're happy to work with you on that. We'd like to create a region, so a regional currency is what we've been talking about, and we could definitely talk more about that. So it'd be great.
Yeah, I think Highland Park, which is a city within Detroit, for those who are live streaming, and it's a really beautiful small city and a great beta site for not just blockchain and crypto, but for solar powering and all kinds of.
That's what we
tech.
invite and welcome in.
Yeah,
all types of innovation, positive disruption. Yeah. That's what the chamber advocates for Highland Park's 2.9 square miles.
I think that's good to hear because there's a lot of companies that are looking at Highland Park as a great site to experiment. So look forward to talking to you afterwards.
Let's catch up for sure.
Keisha, you have another question.
It was funny when I was going to ask a similar question somewhat.
Can you hold on just so that people can hear it on a live stream?
Okay, I was going to ask a similar question. I was just going to say, are you familiar with any friendly counties or areas thus far for crypto and cannabis, I guess, basically?
Yeah,
you said that there's some opt-out areas
Colorado.
for cannabis and things like that. I mean, in Michigan, I'm saying, you know, like
Okay,
in
in
Michigan.
Michigan,
Too
as
early.
far as I know, there hasn't been a whole lot of policy movement on the blockchain front in Michigan. So at the state and local level, I'm unaware of really anything going on that's really changing things. There are other states that we could learn from. So Colorado and Wyoming are pretty big. And Ohio just allowed their taxes to be paid in
Yeah, I saw
Bitcoin.
that.
23
just like
taxes.
a couple days ago. So it's starting to change in some of the states. We really want to position, like the EOS Detroit wants to make ourselves available to legislation and legislators and commissioners here to talk about how we can make Michigan a friendly state for this stuff.
Yeah, I think that's the future, not the present. We just adopted this seed to sale, and we're still operating under emergency rules up until today. They just solidified cultivation like at 5 o'clock today. So we haven't evolved to the point of cryptocurrency and cannabis being married yet. I think this is more of the future than the present. That's hard to say. I think that cannabis moves really fast. Blockchain moves really fast. I think we might be having a different conversation in 18 months. No. No.
So part of the challenge from my perspective right now is the cryptocurrencies are treated at a federal level like stocks, so like commodities. So they're taxed in a way that's really disadvantageous for regular transfer. But the technology is such that like you can do all kinds of transactions, and you have to self-report those, right? But like obviously, we don't want to set up a condition where a lot of people are now vulnerable to being clamped down on because of the way that we've taught them to use this new technology. So it's really important that for us to work with legislation to allow the room to experiment with this stuff. You know, it would be great if we could have a new classification, especially at the federal level, but even if, Wyoming says tokens are utility tokens. They're not securities. So there's states that are showing leadership in allowing blockchain applications to be experimented with and not clipping their wings up front. But if we try to shoehorn this stuff into the existing legal frameworks, it doesn't work. They look like securities. There's no way a decentralized autonomous community or a DAC can even plug in. So there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of discussions to be had still about how to move things forward pragmatically.
Margot, any last words? And what's next with the cannabis industry?
It's getting really high tech. You're getting better and better and better. So you're getting better quality products. You're having better tracking, better packaging. I think that the future looks like something that most of us couldn't imagine unless you've been to a more advanced market like California or Colorado, because we just haven't seen yet what is to come.
Right, and I always think, man, if you don't have a house now, you should buy it in Detroit because it feels like the market has just exploded. Even though we are not seeing it yet in prices, but just the very fact that Michigan has legalized, and we're the only Midwest state to legalize, it's a good time to invest in Detroit and Michigan in general. So I'm going to wrap it up. I just want a couple of announcements. We have some EOS Detroit t-shirts. They're free. They're on the table. Feel free to grab one. Please sign our mailing list, which is right next door to the t-shirts. If you're not on our newsletter list, this is a good way for you to learn more about the blockchain industry, EOS specifically, and all our events. We also have an EOS Detroit meetup group. Please join us. The next event that we're having is December 2nd, and it's for teens. We're setting up crypto wallets for teens. And because I've been asked by a lot of teens they want some crypto. So that is the future, engaging with the future, which is really exciting. And also, I just want to give a really huge shout out to Norwest Gallery. Yet again, thank you for hosting us. If you're not familiar with Norwest Gallery, for those who are live streaming, please Google them, look them up. They're a really great new gallery here in Detroit, and they have a wonderful exhibition. Please take time to check it out, support. There is a donation bucket in the front. So please, support and donate if you're not going to buy one of these wonderful pieces. Thank you again so much for coming out, and please let us know if you have any questions, and if you need any workshops or you want to set up a wallet, please holler at me. Thank you. Thank you, Marco and Rob. Bye-bye.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. Is that still running? Yeah, it's still running.
If it's local, we don't need to live stream.
Joe and myself, Joe White here, and myself and another partner, we are doing a similar event like this in Highland Park on the 1st Saturday, and I wanted to invite you all, if you want to come and speak and educate some more people locally, and everybody that's here, I want to give you a complimentary ticket to come